Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colony Government Channel.
Hello, I'm Colony Town Judge Peter Crummey, and welcome to Benchmark. We'll explore a variety of issues involving our justice system, our legal system, and how they intersect with the citizens of the town of Colony. Today, we are truly fortunate to have one of upstate New York's most distinguished judges, federal judge Randolph Treece. Judge Treece has been serving the bar for over 35 years in a variety of capacities on behalf of the citizens, including stints with the Attorney General's office, the State Controller, and of course now for the past nearly 10 years as a federal judge. Judge Treece, thank you very much for joining us today.
And Peter, thank you for inviting me.
Judge, our half hour here today cannot do justice to your brilliant career here on behalf of the entire Capital Region.
Peter, you flatter me too much. Thank you.
Well, and I have no cases in the federal system, Judge, but I know the citizens are very interested in hearing so much about you. And of course, many of us already recognize that you grew up in Troy, New York, and attended Lansingburgh High School.
Yeah, born and raised in 1948, to show my age. Attended the Lansingburgh School District, graduating from Lansingburgh High School in 1966. And then from there, I went to Siena, which I matriculated there until 1970.
Well, we get to call you our own then, seeing
Absolutely.
that you received your undergraduate degree from a colony school, Siena College, and of course you've distinguished their alumni association in so many ways, and all of us are so proud of all of that you've accomplished on behalf of the bar and on behalf of the citizens as well of the state of New York and now on the federal bench. How did you become a federal judge?
Well, I guess it's a long story, but at first I have to start with my efforts to be a judge, which began in 1985 when I sought to be a city court judge in the city of Troy, which failed. While I was in the Attorney General's office, I sought to be a Court of Claims judge in 92 and in 94, which were not successful. In 1997, I had a failed attempt to run for Supreme Court of the state of New York. But in 2001, while I was working for the controller, Lenny Weiss, who was the former Albany County chair, gave me a call and said that there was a vacancy in the Northern District of New York. United States Magistrate judge position had become available. He thought that I would be a suitable candidate for that position. I told Lenny that I wanted to stay with Carl, be his counsel, work with him as he pursued to be governor. When Lenny says, "You don't understand, judgeships don't come along that often, you better consider this." I went and had a conversation with Carl McCall, who was the controller at that time, and we had a lengthy conversation, and he said, "You told me before when we were interviewed that you one day would want to serve as a judge. How could you pass up this opportunity? You should go now." And at that point, I put in my application to be the magistrate judge in the Northern District of New York. What's really interesting about the process in federal system, particularly with magistrate judges, is that the judges within the district appoint who will serve with them. I went through a screening committee made of 12 people from the community. They interviewed 50 or 60 candidates. They recommend 4 or 5 to the Board of Judges, and then the Board of Judges interview those 4 or 5 candidates, and then they select the magistrate judge. I went through that process in April 2001, and it was really fascinating because I remember I was interviewed at 10:30, and at 1:30 that afternoon, Chief Judge Fred Scullin gave me a call and said he would like for me to be a part of their court family and serve as a magistrate judge, of which I almost fell over, but I accepted immediately. And on September 25th of 2001, I started as a United States Magistrate Judge in the Northern District of New York.
And Judge, before we actually find out more about your day-to-day duties on behalf of the citizens and the federal bench, you had such a celebrated legal career prior to assuming the federal bench, including working in the Capital Defender's Office, and you actually represented defendants in a variety of celebrated murder trials as well. And I think that you were involved in the People versus Gary Evans and the People versus Fred Hunt over in Rensselaer County. Those are well-known cases throughout the Capital region. And did those experiences have any impact on your view of the legal system or what you saw for the future?
Well, by 1995, when the death penalty was resurrected in New York State, I had been practicing for well over 20 years as a criminal practitioner and then as Attorney General, doing civil litigation. So I had a reputation of doing criminal litigation. When I got involved with capital cases, I realized how complex and how demanding they were. I believe the 4 years that I was the first deputy of the Capital Defender Office made me a better lawyer and, quite frankly, a better person, because I was dealing with the duality of man, the good and evil of the defendants that were with me, and then the system that had decided that should he be convicted of murder in the first degree, that we were going to take his life. And so those life struggles really left a deep-seated sensibility about our legal system and our justice system. And the death penalty provisions in the state of New York, I thought, set up a great due process defense for people who are charged. You got all of this significant due process. But when you get down to that final decision of whether or not the person is going to lose his life based upon what he has done, it's quite a chilling effect. And I took a lot of that to heart, and I contemplate upon it daily. Because somebody's life was in my hand. It wasn't their liberty. It wasn't a case about damages or money. It was their life. And I think that's a serious request for a lawyer to undertake. It was probably the most exciting period of my career, but it was also the most demanding, most stressful, for sure.
Well, Judge, I know that when you were on the verge of becoming a federal judge, John Kerr for the New York Law Journal, I believe, did quite an article about your background and experience, and certainly touched on some of the issues that you've just touched on, some of the matters that you've handled that impacted how you looked at the world and had an effect on you in a variety of ways, and including during that service for the Capital Defenders Association and that office that you had a case of People v. Francois, I think it was, and you zealously represented your client once again. And
Kendall Francois was a serial murderer accused in Dutchess County of killing 9 prostitutes. And for more than a year and a half before I left the Capital Defender's Office, I represented Kendall. It had a number of social dynamics, a number of personal dynamics that fodder for novels. And it was just a fascinating experience for me, but again, a very demanding experience for me. I just learned a lot about myself and about humanity by representing somebody who's accused of taking the life of 9 people. And the sensation about Kendall was that he had taken and buried the bodies in the basement of his mother and father's home, who did not know that such activity was taking place and that there were bodies buried. And when he made a confession and they went and dug up those bodies, it was just, it just set the whole community on fire. I still think that there are people, particularly his parents, are still lost as to how this may have happened with a person who was quite religious. His father was Catholic, his mother was Baptist, but it was a religious home. And to have their son be accused and then finally plead guilty to taking 9 lives. was quite an experience.
Well, so many things in your during your practice have been on the forefront of practice here in the Capital Region and beyond. Even in the article that I spoke about that was published in the Law Journal, I talked about your days at Siena too, and something that happened there which motivated you to understand and appreciate your higher education and what you were going to take it to. And again, it's just you revealing yourself and in this way has just only underscored what a confident and understanding, sensitive, and just person that you are. And of course, it certainly benefits the federal bench as well. Tell me about the incident at Siena that caused you.
Well, it was a series of incidents regarding Siena. When I graduated in 1966, it wasn't my real intent to go to Siena. I wanted to go away to school, but my mother was sick. We didn't have a lot of funds, and so we decided to attend Siena. When I attended Siena, I entered Siena only with one other person of color, and that was Tommy Foster, who was from Troy. Because Tommy was poorer than I, Tommy didn't finish, he finished only one semester, so I matriculated 4 years as the only person of color in the day program at Siena. In my freshman year, there were a number of racial incidents that, quite frankly, left me depressed and actually had to go see a counselor because I was ready to actually punch out of the school, just become a ne'er-do-well and just forget about college. I left Siena at the end of my first year, went to Howard University. Because there was a lack of funds, I had to come back to Siena. So I was at Siena again, the only person of color attending. And there was just this one incident when I was alone, basically wondering what I was going to do alone playing basketball. You know, the two cooks who were people of color came up and just told me how profound it was for me to be at school there, which was, put it all in perspective, that they saw it, well, I didn't see it at that particular time. And I really contribute that as the kind of the push for me to finish and graduate from Siena and then consider pursuing higher education at law school later on. I think but for that, I probably would not have graduated from Siena. I think that I would have basically said, I've had enough. I don't like being isolated. I don't like being the only person of color. And experience some of the things that I did, and who knows what would happen. It was a turning point in my life.
Have you ever had a chance to revisit those two gentlemen that talked?
No, I haven't, but one day, maybe about 10 or 15 years after that incident, I was walking down the street and I saw Wolf, that was his nickname, Wolf, and I was basically just put up my hand and waved at him, and he did not recognize me. He looked at me, he waved back, but he just didn't really recognize me at that point in time. And I don't know if he even recalled the significance of it, but quite frankly, it was quite profound for me.
Well, we never know day to day how we may impact someone else's life as we say something caring to someone else, what it does to continue to motivate people onward. And we're so happy for their comments that day and for everything that you've done. Then on to Albany Law School eventually, and certainly we're all of us graduates from Albany Law School are very proud that you're part of our alumni association.
Yeah. I have to say that Albany Law School gave me my life, quite frankly. It gave me a foundation and wings to grow to the extent that I'm serving on the bench. And quite frankly, I had never been so challenged in my life than my 3 years at Albany Law School. And I give much credit to the law school. And to the extent I can, I always try to return the favor, either through funds or my time. You know, it's just been a wonderful institution in my life.
Well, they're so proud to call you their own, for sure. And as you continued on, you did have an opportunity to work with Carl McCall, who obviously one of the most outstanding public servants ever to come into New York State government. Well liked by so many and able to accomplish so many different things, not only in the state Senate. I know he ran for lieutenant governor at one point many years ago, and of course He served as our state controller. And how was that experience working with Carl McCall?
Let me just tell you, at the time that his counsel was leaving, she called me on the phone and asked me to have lunch with her. I had lunch with her, and she's saying that, I have to return back to New York City to spend more time with my family. I can't travel back and forth to Albany. Would you interview with Carl? I said to her, listen, I've been a litigator. I'm doing criminal law. What do I know about state finance, legislation, all of the things that the controller does? She says, please just interview with him. That was on a Tuesday. That Friday, I met with Carl, and we had an interview that ran approximately an hour, hour and a half. And when I left that interview, I felt an honor to be asked to serve with him, and I was saying, I hope that he offers me the job. I would like to serve with him. That following Monday, 10 o'clock, he called and asked me if I would serve with him, and I served with him for about 3.5, 4 years as his counsel. What was remarkable about him is that he is such a well-balanced, well-tempered, well-thought of, and cerebral public servant. And it was just great being in his inner circle within his executive committee, helping to, help with his policies and his direction of the Comptroller's Office. That was one of the reasons why I was so interested in serving in his campaign, to see what a gubernatorial campaign was like, but because it was Carl McCall, and that it would have been historical and it would have been a legacy. But he saw another vision for me, and when he said, you want to be a judge, here is your opportunity, you should do it. So it was a real pleasure to call him boss every day, and I still do. When I see him, we talk on the phone, I'll go, hey boss, how you doing? He is a remarkable human being.
Wow.
I wish that he had served as our governor, but he has served New York State well in the capacity that he has.
And likewise, you've created your own legacy too, in breaking through so many ceilings that had existed for a century or so here in the Capital Region as to serving on the bench. Today now, federal bench, what's the nature of what you'll do in a given week or a given month? What happens down there at the building downtown on Broadway in Albany?
Okay. Well, your listeners should know that in the federalist system, we have several types of judges. Our Constitution in Article 3 establishes district judges who are appointed for life that handle the federal cases. Because of the influx of litigation and the burden placed upon the court, the Congress turned to Article 1 that allows them to appoint lower tribunals. So they appointed first commissioners, and then they made the commissioners magistrate judges. We are an adjunct to the district judges. So essentially what happens in the Northern District of New York, that every case that comes in to the Northern District gets assigned 2 judges, a district judge and a magistrate judge. On the civil side, we basically manage the case. We conduct all of the procedural aspects of that litigation. And then after all of that procedural process has taken place, then it is basically handed to the district judge to make the dispositive rulings or to conduct trials. Also, as a magistrate judge, though, when the parties consent, we can handle the dispositive aspect of the case and handle trials. And I usually handle somewhere 4 to 6 civil cases a year in terms of the trial work. On the criminal side, we handle the preliminary stages of the criminal case, the search warrants, the arrest warrants, the pen registers. We do the initial appearances, the arraignments, and we're the ones that set bail. Once a person has been indicted, then the case shifts to the district judges. Each district in the country can use the magistrate the way they need to. So in some districts they do different things, but here in the Northern District we're treated as comrades to the district judges. And when the district judge will say, "Randy, I need you to do this," I will do that. Or they need me to write a report and recommendation for them to review, an opinion for them, we do that. So It's hard to say. We're like an appendage to the district court.
Well, actually, though, there are times when attorneys can agree and ask you to actually preside over the entire matter. Is that correct? And that happens routinely with you.
That happens routinely. I would say roughly throughout a year, it may be a dozen to a dozen and a half times where I am the one who's handling the case all the way through, as opposed to just doing the managerial aspect of the case. And
well,
that's pretty fascinating too.
Well, sure it is. And we've heard the expression, you'll hear it in society, oh, don't make a federal case out of it. Yeah. In looking at, you practiced so diligently in the state court system as well, and you have significant background there. Do you find that the federal system actually is more involved either in the length or the breadth of a proceeding or the documents that must be considered?
I think because of the volume cases that go into state court, the judges cannot devote as much time to that case as you would imagine. However, in the federal system, we devote significant time to every aspect of the case, so that when we get a disagreement, we are really hands-on, and we were writing more so lengthy decisions as to the analysis of why the ruling should go this way or that way. But quite frankly, the skills that I learned in state court were easily transferable to the federal system. I think the only difference once I got on the bench is that I was doing more research and writing than I did when I was practicing in state court. And I would say 75–80% of what I do is research and writing. And I write approximately 80–90 decisions a year that I write personally, and my clerks will probably do as many. I have two clerks, and we split it up, and they do a third, and I'm doing a third. So I'm writing approximately, again, as I say, 75–80 cases a year.
And Judge, your caseload is nearly 400 cases
nearly
a year.
400 cases a year. It doesn't stop. It's like the spigot. It's always running. It may vacillate. It may drop below 400, maybe in the 300 range, but then again, it may pick up. It's cyclical. I don't know what are the factors that contribute, the higher level or the lower level. We're always constantly studying that, but I would say the benchmark for me has been anywhere from 350 to 400 cases a year.
Well, Judge, it's a rather dramatic system, and I note that it seems to me that the federal system has embraced the electronic era in a big way. And do you see it that way as well?
Absolutely. I think Congress had the foresight to provide the resources for the court to come into the electronic age, and it has been a tremendous aid. I can't tell you how it has facilitated what we do. Every document is filed electronically, and all I have to do is put it on my computer screen, call up that document, and I can see it without having the paper and having to worry and track the paper. Also, we have a case docket that keeps the chronology of all of the events that take place in the case. So anytime I need to go back, let's say I get a decision, I'm asked to do a decision now, but I may have ruled, or there may have been some aspect of it a year or two ago, I can go back and get that document, look at that, and keep track of the events that have taken place. And I think it's a great aid. I hear attorneys basically saying now they don't have to worry about ticker systems. They got the case docket there. They can follow it all the way through. They know when their next appointment in, when their next papers are due. They can see all of the rulings. They can see all the communications with the court. There's no charge of ex parte communications because everything's right there in the case docket. And I think it's a great aid. Also, what we're seeing is that litigators are now not bringing in paper exhibits, but they're actually bringing their exhibits in on CD-ROM and DVDs, and they're put up on screens. And I think that makes facilitate the efficiency of presentation of evidence. I don't know if the state system has provided the resources, but we have actually computer screens on the desk. All of the players that you need, DVD players, CD players, screens, large screens to that can be used in a number of ways to manipulate all the electronic information that's being transmitted. I have a trial coming up in July. I've had these litigators before, and they've already talked about how this case will be presented electronically as opposed to hard paper. And I think it's a blessing. I remember we used to wheel in boxes
That's right.
with documents, and now they walk in with a briefcase and just pull it out of their pocket, and here's their case. I think that it is where the system is going. I see the state system eventually getting there once they have the resources. The other great thing about what's happening in the technology is that when a stenographer is taking down the testimony now, I'm getting real time. I'm getting and seeing the testimony as it's being presented.
That's fabulous.
And so if there's an objection being made and my recollection of the question being asked, all I have to do is turn and look, see the question, be able to have a little time to cogitate on it and to make the appropriate ruling. The other thing in the federal system is that we require all trial submissions to be presented so that we can see the issues ahead of time and prepare for the rulings that may be applied with regards to that case. And I think the timing of that and the presentation of it has made I think a smoother presentation than almost at the moment type of thing. I think it eliminates error, judicial error.
Are only the parties allowed to access the information and the pleadings and all of the rulings, or could any citizen actually access the court dockets and files electronically?
Well, if you have what we call your PACER registration, all lawyers have that, all of the press have that, they can see the docket on any case at any particular time.
Right.
And a lot of times you wonder did the Times Union be able to get that document in almost cited verbatim? That's because they have access to our case dockets. The public, the individual public may not, because again, you have to go through the PACER registration. They haven't worked out all the security with regards to individual members of the public, but public has access through the Fourth Estate.
Judge, your accomplishments at bench and bar are without parallel here in the Capital Region. You also are involved in so many community activities as well. And are there some that you'd like to highlight at this point?
Well, there was one of the things that was ingrained in me by my mother that, to whom much is given, much is required. And I have been blessed, particularly since I've gotten out of law school. My life has been on a very interesting track, and I've gained so much, and I think that I should give back and serve my community. And so I've served on a number of boards in the community. I can't tell you how many, maybe 40 or 50 within my adulthood. But I take particular delight in my role as the founder of the Capital District Black and Hispanic Bar Association, my time with the Albany County Bar Association, my time with the boys clubs, whether it's in Albany or in Troy, the Capital District YMCA. Keith Rhodes and I, 15 years ago, found the Youth Basketball League within the YMCA, and it's been replicated throughout the district. When people call, I try to be there and provide whatever services I can, whatever talent or treasure I may have. There's so many, Peter, and it's been a reward. And I think that it has helped me develop on the bench. I never forget from where I came from. I came from very humble beginnings. There are humble people who are before me, and I want to treat them with respect, and I try to do that whenever I can. And I think my public service in the community has basically kept me anchored in that respect, and I want to thank those who have invited me into their organizations to do whatever I could possibly do to help their organization be a viable organization.
I know when you have 2 or 3 minutes of private time, you enjoy jazz as well. Is
Absolutely.
that right, Judge?
I am a jazz aficionado.
Any favorite artists that you enjoy?
I get that. I get asked that all the time. I enjoy so many jazz artists, old and new. I mean, I have a significant collection, probably over 3,500, 4,000 items from albums, CDs, tapes, and whatever. I write jazz articles. I'm a feature writer with AlbanyJazz.com. I was writing for A Place for Jazz. I've done some liner notes for some artists. And I just love the art of jazz. It's such a great art. It's such a creative art. It's too bad that more people didn't appreciate the creativity and the talent that goes into being a jazz musician. So I can't identify any particular artist, but if you were to throw out names, I would probably say yes. I'm a fan. I'm definitely a fan.
Well, Judge, clearly your background and experience and your commitment to our community is so diversified, and we are so very fortunate to be able to call you our own here in the Capital Region.
I'm glad Colony is calling me one of their own.
Well, absolutely, and you spent some of your education experience here, and we're so happy that you've come here today to talk just ever so briefly about the distinguished career of Judge Randolph Treece, and thank you, Judge, very much for spending your very valuable time with us today.
And Peter, thank you for the invitation.
Well, we're thrilled. I'm Judge Peter Crummey, and thank you for joining me on Benchmark.